Hey y'all, good evening. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wait about 5 minutes before we jump off. So just to make sure that everyone is here. In the meantime, we're going to be dropping our sign-in form in the chat. So keep in mind, we do have a refurbished laptop raffle at the end of this event. And in order to be entered into the raffle, you have to sign in so that we can grab your names from there. So this is the sign in. It's great to see everybody this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. If you could just put in the chat or come off mute and tell us where you're calling in from, like what part of the city or what school you're representing. Give us drop your name in the chat. We'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So again, feel free in the chat or to come off mute in the next couple. Hey, Central, I'm 256. Hello, Central. Central in the house. So please drop in the chat where you're calling in from, what school you go to if you're a student, what brought you to this event. We love to see it. We love to see you guys here. And we just would love to know where you go to school or how you found out about this event or what part of the city you're representing. We're going to get started in another moment, and I'm going to be over here dropping this sign-in form that gets you entered into the computer raffle. Central, Carver, shout out. Those are the two schools I was at this morning. So shout out to Central, shout out to Carver. Hey, Lincoln in the house. Love you guys. I'll be there tomorrow. All right, someone from Instagram, hopefully a follower of Philly Goes to College. 286 in the house. Love y'all. Lincoln, Carver, love y'all too. Got about another minute or two. Again, feel free to drop in the chat. We'd love to learn more about you. How did you find out about this event? What school do you go to? What neighborhood are you repping? The sign-in form is how you get entered into the raffle. You must be able to pick up the computer in Philadelphia. For my Carver Lincoln Central people, that shouldn't be an issue. If there's anyone calling in from, pardon me, from Florida to educate themselves about cost of attendance, shout out to you. That's great that you're educating yourself, but if you cannot pick up the computer in Philadelphia, PA, you need to be able to pick up that computer here in Philadelphia. Here's a sign-in form. You got to fill it out for your name to be entered into the raffle. That's where we pull the names for the raffle from. Thank, thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll give it about one more minute and then jump our program off. Happy to shout out to Alexis Mercado, our panelist. I'm going to make you a co-host. Sandy is your student here?
She is joining shortly.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. Happy week off from Decision Day. Countdown to May 1st. If you're just now joining us, please let us know what school you go to. Please let us know what neighborhood you're representing if you'd like. Please let us know how you found out about this event. We always love to hear where you found out about this from. Shout out to all our students here. Any seniors? You can, and if you're a senior, you can drop in the chat that you're a senior because we are here for you, seniors. That's why we're here. I mean, we're here for everybody, but seniors, we know May 1st is coming. Please make sure you fill out the sign-in form in order to be entered into our computer raffle. All right. Sandy, are we good to go? Okay. Sandy, do you mind doing the intro for our college student spotlight?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandy from Campus Philly. I'm our director of student engagement, and I work with our street team, which is made up of college students and recent grads who help represent Campus Philly at our on-campus events, as well as connect with high schoolers all about college fit and thinking through if staying in the Philly region for school. And I have one of our current street team members, Deja, here to talk a little bit about the approach to considering different financial aid offers, as well as how she worked through thinking about the direct and indirect costs of financing her college education. And Deja, I'm going to ask you to unmute right now.
Oh, and before our spotlight, one more note about the computer raffle. You got to stay to the end of this program in order to win the raffle. So please do stay to the end. Okay. Let me. All right, Deja, we'd love to hear from you.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I apologize. My dog is going crazy on her toy right now in the background, and I'm trying to connect to the video, but my laptop is being insane. I'm gonna try to connect on my iPad so I can get video as well. But do you want me to just start with the intro?
Sure.
Okay. My name's Deja. Nice to meet everyone. I am actually a recent graduate. I started at Temple in Philly, and then I transferred to VCU. Is there anything specific that you'd like me to touch on? I didn't get to hear the beginning too much. It was little bit choppy.
Yeah. If you could talk a little bit about your approach to um, choosing what school you went to in terms of evaluating different financial aid offers, as well as how you approach the indirect and direct costs of college.
So for me, I was first generation, so it was really important to me to have some sort of scholarship funding. I filled out a FAFSA every year. I made sure to get it in super early. I think that it opens in, is it October? I can't remember the specific date, but I did a FAFSA every year. My FAFSA covered me for most of my tuition, um, as well as I applied for scholarships locally with my school. So I actually I'm a rare case. I didn't have any debt because I got a scholarship from my high school. And then I was able to do like programs such as study abroad. I'm really big on speaking on it. If anyone has any questions, I knew I wanted to study abroad in college, and I had it fully funded through my school through applying internally through scholarships. Um, I would say, in terms of scholarships, I know they're hard and it's probably even harder now, but just being as specific as possible. I am a woman of color, and I also am first generation. So that was the type of scholarships that I looked for. And it made it easier because there's so many out there to apply for. I know someone who got a scholarship for being left handed. So I say be very niche as possible.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll do just like one other quick question for you. How, what's the main thing outside of the costs that are billed that you think college students have to pay for?
The main thing outside the class that are built,
Like
I would
yeah, the main thing outside of the things that you're billed for, like of all the things that college students have to pay for.
I would say housing is a big one, and then also activities. I could speak on the activity fee. I mean, Philly is a big org, even though it's not directly on one campus. That is kind of like an activity. When I was in school, I was super involved. I think especially even if you're in like a STEM major or like engineering, anything along that lines, I still think it's pretty big in terms of networking to be involved on orgs on campus. Honestly, all the internships that I got or job opportunities that came my way were because I was involved in the student life, such as like being in homecoming, helping with that, helping with the activity board. Every Most schools, especially state schools, have a form of activity board. I know Campus Philly, we collab with a lot of boards. Um, my background is marketing, advertising, and I use that interest to collab with the activity board so that I could network with companies that are in the area because they most likely work with that board of your school if they're doing any type of collab event. So I could speak a lot about that because I was really involved with that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your insights and your experience. So we're going to kind of keep things moving along. Jonathan, you are on deck. So the next part of our program before our panel discussion is Jonathan is going to share with us two sample aid letters, right? And we're going to talk about like all the different things that you could possibly see in an aid letter. So Jonathan, you good to share your screen?
Yes, I am. Let me do a real quick. Okay, cool. Everyone should be able to see my screen. Also, I should probably introduce myself. Hey, I'm Jonathan. Hi, I'm Jonathan Holbert, manager of college and career advising at Heights, Philadelphia. So I've been doing college access, college advising, work for 9 years now. And then prior to that, I was in financial aid and student accounts, at a college for like about 3 years. Um, so this is definitely something I know a little bit about and have seen far too many award letters. So I'd like to show you a couple now just to give you an idea of what some different ones look like. Briefly, maybe how to pull out some information from it and identify some of uh, different uh, different numbers from different types of award letters. So I think what you're looking at now is the Jefferson one. I don't actually see what I am sharing. There we go. Yeah, it's the Jefferson one. Okay. Which is great. So the award letters I'm showing you are real ones from this year that I anonymized. So there's no identifying information on there, but these are real examples of from this year of aid that students have received. Um, so this isn't a sample or anything. This is really what they received this year. So you can see from Jefferson. I want to hit a couple of different things and some different words that we'll talk about later. But on Jefferson's, they talk about direct cost. So what's the total cost that they will bill you for? What's the bill going to be in the mail when it comes from Jefferson for them, 51,220. They also list here some potential costs you might have as a result of attending college. So transportation to and from the university. So in this instance, the student is commuting to college, right? So it says commuter. So the transportation costs they're estimating are going to be a little higher since they're not living on campus. They're taking SEPTA or maybe gas for a car or whatever it might be. So they're kind of estimating some different expenses that they might have here as a result of being in school.
So
Um,
Jonathan, could you just make it a little bigger if possible, like zoom
yeah,
in?
it's small.
Yeah, there it goes.
Okay,
Now we see those dollars.
that's better. Oh, too far. How's that? Okay, great. So yeah, you can kind of see those numbers here, and it gives you a total estimated cost of attendance. So just what is it going to cost you to go to college, including the estimate of expenses, but then also exactly what you're paying to the college. They also list here scholarships and grants. So this is all of the money that you will receive from various sources that you will not have to pay back, right? Scholarships and grants. So you have some awards here from Jefferson, so Jefferson Grant, scholarship, things like that. And then also you see the federal aid and then also an estimated state grant. So you might see on some of these award letters, it say estimated or an asterisk or here's there's an asterisk here, and then somewhere down in the small print on the second page, it'll say These numbers are estimated because of various reasons. Um, so nothing is expected to change dramatically between now and when you do receive a bill in August, but things can shift because, for instance, this Pennsylvania state grant number, it's not actually approved by the state yet. We're just predicting based off of the last handful of years what the increase has been year over year in it. So it's um, pretty accurate to what they expect it to be. Same thing with total direct costs. So the tuition, this number probably isn't approved yet by the board. So, it might change by, $100 here or there maybe, but they're predicting that this is what it's going to be. So they just want to make sure that when you look at all the numbers on here, that you're not surprised when it's not exactly 49,267. It's 49,264 or something, So it's just, they just want to warn you there's a little bit of a change, but it's not going to be dramatic from what you see on here unless there's something major shift with information that you're providing to them, or suddenly the student decides they want to live on campus and that changes everything. So it's just one thing to note when you do see estimated or asterisk, because that can be a little worrying when you're committing to a school. Like, what do you mean it's going to change? Can happen. Um, so then down here, I think you can still see it in the screen. Yep. Okay. Um, Down here, they do a little bit of math for you and try to show you what it's going to cost. So one thing to note, some schools will include loans in what they are going to offer you and as part of their calculation of what you are going to owe to the school. So we already established up here, the amount, 51,220 directly to the college, what you will owe to them. So that's your cost. And we establish up here, this is the free money from different sources that they are going to offer you. So this is the total. So it's simple math, subtracting the two numbers. Now Jefferson, they included the loans when they did the final number. So you can see here, they included 5,500. So then they're saying you won't pay anything to Jefferson. But the reality is they are assuming that you are going to take this $5,500 in loans. So in actuality, when you do the math, you can see 51,220 minus 49,267. I won't do the math. It's like what, 1840 or something like that. But it's not actually zero. If you take out the loans, then you won't owe anything. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of in-depth look to see what they are actually including in their calculation. Because loans, of course, you have to pay back, right? They also next to it included total cost of attendance minus the scholarships and grants. So they went ahead and used all of these estimations up here for these different expenses. And that's how I got that 63,594 and said, what is the total cost out of pocket that we expect you to have based off of transportation costs, books, supplies, miscellaneous, all that good stuff, minus the free money that we're giving you, and that's 14,000. So that's just an estimate, they don't actually know how much you're going to spend, back and forth. They don't actually know that your books are going to cost this much, right? It's just an estimate to give you an idea. So you won't actually be paying this dollar amount to anyone or anything. It's just an estimate. Um, you might also see on award letters, federal work study. So it's important to know if you do see that federal work study is an account that a student can earn up to $2,000 by working on campus. So it's not a scholarship, it's not a grant, it's also not a loan. It means that you can get a job on campus while you're attending, in this case, Jefferson, and earn up to $2,000 throughout that academic year. Yeah, and if you don't have it on there, or if for some reason you work more than that, you can request it to be increased. And also, if you don't have it on it, you can ask and you can still get a job. Sometimes schools just don't put it on there. Cool. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I'm happy to move on to the next one. Because I
We've got
can't really
about
see.
3 minutes, but I know you already introduced the main elements, so we can just talk about
Yeah, this should be quicker. This is just to compare the two options. So I'll zoom in here again so you can see a little bit more. So this is also another real example of Drexel. So you can immediately see the difference of how they lay everything out. So they broke everything down by fall, winter, spring because Drexel is trimesters, and then added it up over here So you have a whole separate section that includes all of your gift aid, so the aid that you don't have to pay back, that they're just giving you, right? Gift. And then they hit you down here with the expenses. So again, we saw the Drexel build, so the direct costs. This student is living on campus, so this is their total for attending and living on campus, which is a lot of money. Um, and then again, we see the estimates here. So it's just a different layout. The information is there and the same. They just kind of put it in different places. And then they did the math a little bit differently. So on the previous award letter, we saw where they did the math for us with free gift aid minus the total expenses, right? And they told us that cost and included loans. In this instance, they only did the full cost of attendance, so the direct Drexel billed expenses plus the indirect costs. So these things that, they're just estimating $900 for transportation, even though the student is living on campus. I don't know what they're spending $900 on, but who knows? Um, so they're estimating that and then adding it into what Drexel is going to bill you for that amount, minus the gift aid, and then giving you the net cost of attendance. But nowhere are they actually telling you how much you're going to directly owe to Drexel. They're not doing that math for you, so they're not breaking it down for you. All the pieces are here for you to do it, but they're not directly giving it to you. And then below here, now they're offering you what the available options are to help cover this cost beyond the free gift aid, right? So here's where they're going to put the loans. So these are the loans available to this particular student. And then again, we see they didn't have work study listed here. So this is an instance of, it doesn't mean that you're not necessarily eligible for it. It might just mean that you need to email or call and ask if you are eligible if you wanted to work on campus. Um, yeah. So you can kind of see like all information is here on both of them. They're just a bit different styles. And, it takes a little bit of extra effort to sort of compare the two offers. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. Like how can you make these, apples, oranges, pears all into apples so you can compare them across, one fruit basket. It's a terrible metaphor, but that's what I'm going with. Um, so yeah, cool. And again, I don't know if there are any questions, but there'll definitely be a lot more time later, but we'll take some questions too.
Yeah, you can drop your questions in the chat as if questions are occurring to you. So, so you didn't have just this time to ask questions. If something occurs to you from what Jonathan said when we're doing our panel, you can feel free to drop those in the chat and we will be capturing those and adding them into the Q&A. So we are going to have a Q&A at the end of our panel. Turning now to our wonderful panelists. Just a note to our panelists, I think we're going to shorten our intros and make it your name, where you work, and your role and title. And then we're going to jump off our panel discussion and questions. So if we could start with Alexis Mercado, introducing yourself, that's name, where you work, your affiliation, and your role.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Alexis Mercado. I am the acting director of the Octavius Catto Scholarship here at the Community College of Philadelphia. So essentially, I oversee a program at the college that helps Philadelphia residents get access to free college, free books, money to pay for food and transportation, as well as staff support.
Thank you. We'll go now to Madeline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Berkner. I work at the Philadelphia Education Fund, and I am the manager of persistence efforts. And I want to do an extra special welcome to any college access student who is joining us tonight because I work with your wonderful college access coordinators.
And we'll go now to Allison. Good to see you this evening, Allison.
Hey, so I'm Allison Kelsey. I'm also at the Philadelphia Education Fund. We all used to be colleagues with Alexis when she was at the Philadelphia Education Fund. And I work on our scholarship program, which means that I'm looking at, tons of financial aid letters and negotiating with financial aid departments and student counts all the time on exactly the stuff that we're talking about tonight.
And Jonathan, if you could just recap where you work and what your position.
Yep. In Heights, Philadelphia, I'm manager of college and career advising.
Awesome, thanks. Also to our audience members, we do close the raffle before our breakout rooms. So we are going to end the panel at 6:45. That's when we close the raffle. So please do make sure to fill out that sign-in form. And we are going to do the last 5 minutes of the panel time before your breakout rooms to answer any questions in the chat, or you can save your questions for our experts in your breakout rooms. So I'm going to send the first question over to start with Allison and Madeline, and then if anyone else on our panel wants to jump in, they can feel free. What should I look for in my offer letters from colleges, and how can I compare offer letters from colleges?
You
Well,
want
how
to
about I
start?
start and I'll pass to you, Allison?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Jonathan gave us two examples of really good letters. And I want to point out that some of the letters you received might not be that good, right? We saw clear headings that identified what was a grant, what was a loan. There were divisions between like different paragraphs. They were doing some of the math for you, and they were showing you the costs to begin with. They gave you those estimates. Not every award letter is created equal in that way. So the first thing that you really need to do is see what information's even there, right? Identify what the free money is. That's our favorite kind of money. That's the gift money. We love that money. And see if they are actually giving you an estimate of costs. Not every college will do that. You might have to track it down on your own. After that, you want to identify the loaned money. And after that, the potential money, the work study. There are some shady, I don't want to say shady colleges, but some practices that don't really add clarity, we'll say, where a college might lump all the sources of money in one big list, and it's kind of on you to determine, is this loaned, is this potential, or is this real money? And sometimes colleges even try to sneak in things like a Parent Plus loan, which is not a guaranteed form of aid, into your package. So it looks like you've got all this money, but really there's hoops you have to jump through. So, Allison, I'll stop there and pass to you.
Yeah, agree with all of that. Those are well organized, many are not. And when I'm sorting out what funds we're going to give to our students, I have a spreadsheet where I pop every little bit in. And in fact, I don't know if I can share that with Rachel to get to everybody who perhaps signs up for the laptop thing to send that out to you that you could use on your own to put things in. Or if you're, not comfortable, it's very simple Excel, but if just write it on a piece of paper, like make a grid so that you can start writing down, okay, so these are the loans, and that'll be very obvious because there'll be two types. These are the scholarships and grants. It'll say grant, it'll say scholarship, it'll say like fund, something like that. Here's my work study. And then, as Madeline said, very often they'll include costs, but as we saw from Jonathan's examples, sometimes there are things included in a cost that aren't things that you're actually going to have as a cost. It depends on if you're commuting, living on campus, depends on if you have to contribute something to the household rent if you're commuting, or kind of what you're doing. So there are different permutations. So you really need to spend time looking at these things, which is kind of the best way to compare one to the other and see at the end what it is that might not be covered. It might, what you want to do, the school that you want to go to might not be covering everything that you'd like, in which case then you need to get with some trusted advisors and figure out if it's still the place to go or how you're going to fund that difference, depending on how that goes. And I know that's part of what we're talking about in a few minutes.
Thank you so much. Also, just to note for everyone here, we'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered for the Eventbrite. So we're happy to include that resource, the spreadsheet, and any other resources. Just real quick, Jonathan, Alexis, is there anything you want to jump in on regarding offer letters or comparing offer letters? I'm also happy to move to cash gaps, which is definitely the next thing on our list. So I'll send it to Alexis. What is a cash gap and how do I close my cash gap?
So a gap is how much money, for example, we were talking about award letters and all of the money that you get. And let's pretend that we're ideally talking about free money, right? Like maybe we're choosing a school where it is um free. I'm sorry, not free. It is we don't want to worry about loans, right? Our gap is the difference in between how much we were awarded and how much we have left to pay. And then what was the second part to your question, Rachel? I'm sorry.
No worries. What are some strategies for addressing when you have a cash gap? What do you do? What are some things you can do?
Okay. So I think that some ways to cover your cash gap is to ensure that you are applying for additional scholarships, getting connected to opportunities that are willing to cover that particular gap, and just doing as much research as possible to make sure that you can get as much money and free money as possible to close that gap, including the Catto scholarship. That's what we do in the Octavius Catto scholarship. I was like, should I or should I not?
All right,
There's
Alexis.
there's a reason why I put you on that question.
I know. I was like, wait,
No,
is
please
this
go
shameless
for
plug
it.
time? Okay,
Please
cool.
go for it.
So in the Octavius Catto Scholarship, that is what we do, is that we close gaps for students that choose to come to us here at the Community College of Philadelphia. So any student that is interested in seeking an associate degree or even a bachelor's, and you want to start debt free, right, for the first 2 years of your bachelor's degree. So what we do is after your financial aid is applied, your free financial aid, right? So Pell Grant, your PA State grant, we then close that gap. And we pay any tuition that's not covered by your financial aid in the Catto Scholarship. And then in addition to those things, though, in the Catto Scholarship, we do provide students with a book stipend every semester. And in that book stipend, it's not just for books, so any supplies or materials that you may need for your courses. So if you are a photography student and you need special things, or you're a culinary student and you need a knife kit, or an automotive student and you need certain tools, we are not going to expect for you to cover those costs. We will cover those costs for you. And I always share, like for nursing students, your first book when you get into the nursing program is $1,200, but our stipend is only $500. We will not expect you to come up with that extra $700. We increase that bookstore stipend for you for that semester so that you are able to cover your books in full. We also, in addition to that, provide students with a $275 monthly payment that you can use for food, transportation, however you want to supplement your education. So like Jonathan mentioned, when looking at an award letter, they include transportation a lot of times on there. That transportation is not something that is typically going to be you're given money for, but here in the Catto Scholarship, we do give you cash, right, every month that you can use to buy a SEPTA pass, to pay for your parking, to pay your Wi-Fi bill because you're deciding to take online courses, right? Whatever makes the most sense for you, that is going to help you supplement your education.
Before I send it on over to Jonathan, Madeline had an additional comment. Just to thank you, Alexis. Shout out to the Catto. You guys are amazing. Taking care of those indirect costs too, right? Madeline, go ahead and jump in, and then Jonathan, you can address anything about cash gaps that we haven't covered.
Yeah, I wanted to add pick up on something that Jonathan had mentioned, and then Alexis talked about commuting. Jonathan made a comment about you suddenly decide to live on campus and that changes everything. And I just wanted to refine that a little bit more. Some students go in and they say, I want to live on all these different campuses, including campuses that are within a commuting distance. Like I've seen this at Arcadia or Chestnut Hill, where at first students say, well, let me just see what the money would be like if I lived on campus. And then maybe they get the aid award letter and they go, whoa, I have a big cash gap. And then they say, you know what? If I just got rid of my housing and meal plan, then that would shrink my gap and then I'd be able to afford to go. One thing to be careful about that is changing from from housing to no housing doesn't automatically mean that your gap will completely disappear. Chances are the college gave you a little bit of extra money because they saw you wanted to live on campus to begin with. And so just by dropping housing, it might not completely eliminate that gap. So I just wanted students to be aware that oftentimes colleges see that you asked to live on campus. You put that that on the FAFSA, right? And so they awarded you based on that decision. And so they might actually pull back some of the aid if you make a status change. So that was just something before we got too far into cash gaps. I wanted to make sure that that was something you were looking out. If you do need to adjust your housing status, like you got to kind of do it now. Also because, you know, rooms are finite. And if you don't kind of figure out if you really want to be claiming one of those dorm rooms now-ish. It can be the finances can be a little bit trickier later on. So that's a now thing to solve.
Thank you so much. Some of these things are they sneak up on you and you wouldn't expect. So back to Jonathan quickly. What about those cash gaps?
Yeah.
What are the hot tips to close a cash gap?
Yep. So there's lots of different things that you can explore if you're at this point and you're looking at some offers from colleges and you're like, none of these are really affordable. What do I do? So like Madeline mentioned, one strategy is to be like, well, right now I have that I'm going to live on campus at Drexel. It's like, let's just see what it looks like if I commute. How much does that lower my expenses? So you go through that process, like Madeline said, which can take some time because a financial aid officer has to actually go in and adjust things and then communicate what the new aid is. It takes a little bit of time. So the sooner you do it, the better. Um, you can also look at potentially appealing your financial aid with colleges. So all colleges have to have some sort of process where students can write to their financial aid office and appeal for additional aid. So there's a variety of different ways to do it, and unfortunately, every college is a little bit different. So you have to look at what your particular college process is. Sometimes it's not even on the website or in your portal. You just have to email a financial aid person, and then they will send you the form. So it looks a little bit different for each one. But universally, what you need to be prepared to provide them is some sort of information that demonstrates that your financial circumstances aren't necessarily reflected by the information that you already submitted. So let's say since you last filed your taxes, so your 2024 taxes that would have used on this FAFSA, you had both of your parents lost their job, so they're now unemployed, and that the information you provided on the FAFSA does not represent your current circumstances at all. Maybe there was a recent someone had a hospital stay, so there's suddenly a large medical bill that you're responsible for. So something that you can say like, there's some new expenses, or I have some new financial information to communicate. There's got to be like something you can give them to say like, this isn't, I can't afford this. That's what they're going to ask for. And certainly there are other things, you can do and get creative with, and sometimes you can just say, I can't afford it. Is there anything you can do, please? And sometimes there's a little bit, but it's important to note that, if you owe $20,000 to Drexel, a financial aid appeal is not going to magically make $20,000 go away. So it's not going to be sort of the cure to the entire problem, right? So maybe that will get you 2,000 or 3,000. And then now suddenly you're like, okay, if I also take out my federal loans and, you kind of cobble it together a little bit. So it's not going to suddenly make it go away, but it's one thing that you can do. Yeah, exactly. It's like suddenly it slowly becomes more workable. And then maybe you get an outside scholarship for $2,000, or you start piecing it together a little bit, and it can certainly help. But it's important to note like none of the strategies are going to take care of the entire amount. It's you kind of got to do all of them a little bit at the same time. So that's definitely what I'd say too. That I wanted to highlight is that appeal that you really can ask for more money. So don't be shy about it. Like the worst they can say is no, and then you're in the same scenario. I had a family this year who was like, but what if they look at the new information and they take money away? I've never seen that happen before. I've only seen people say no or get additional aid, so you don't need to worry about exposing new info. And they're like, oh, actually, you won the lottery? Well, you don't need all this. That I haven't had that happen before. Um, I did have someone real quick while I still have the mic, hypothetically speaking. Someone did want to see one of the bad award letters, so I did real quick pull one up and get rid of the name. So I do have one real quick that I can share. It's like it's not the worst of the worst, but I knew that there was one that I had that I could show quickly. So this one you can see is from Hampton. Not this year, this is last year. So Hampton University. So you can see here, they have the direct costs listed here, and then right below it, the indirect costs, which you kind of notice are not as descriptive as some of the other indirect costs that we saw. There are 4 or 5 different, breakdowns of them. Here they have 2, which is interesting. and it's less than some of the other numbers that we saw at other universities, even the one that was living on campus at Drexel. Like, it seems different. Um, and then you can see, okay, where's my aid? And then they show like, oh, actually, here's the whole calculation before we give you any aid. Here's the total estimated cost, and here's all the funds that you have available to you. So look at that. Your net cost is zero before they give you any other information. They show, congratulations, you're not going to owe anything, which is so exciting. It's important to note, all on one page. You have to go to the next page before you see any other information about where the heck they're getting the $50,000 from. So once you actually start looking at the numbers, you're like, wait a second. The only free aid that I have listed here is one scholarship. One scholarship, right? One scholarship. All the other money is coming from loans. So they're including a PLUS loan for nearly $30,000, these federal loans that are in the student's name, PLUS loan being in the parent's name for $35,000. So actually, while it looks up here like you're not owing anything because you have $50,000 available to you, in actuality, you're owing $35,000 a year. Yeah. So just one example of like you gotta be careful. Yeah. Yeah. Not everyone are there are bad actors out there, so you have to watch when you're looking at these. Yeah. I'll stop now because I did have someone ask, so I was excited to show.
Yeah, that's not the surprise you want. We had some great questions in the chat, but really quick before we turn to Q&A and like shouting out some of those questions from the chat, I wanted to ask our panelists. So I'm kind of going to condense our question about direct and indirect costs, especially since we saw those in some of the offer letters. I know we had mentioned like a knife kit and like a very expensive nursing textbook. What are some of the costs that kind of sneak up on students or that they're like not really expecting that maybe that students and families don't plan for that can be really challenging?
I can start real quick. So one thing is if housing isn't provided over breaks and you're not nearby. So even if you're, at Arcadia or Gettysburg or somewhere, um, during fall break, during winter break, spring break, study break, whatever it might be, sometimes housing, you can't always stay on campus during those breaks. They make you move out. So that means you're paying for transportation somehow home and then back again. So sometimes transportation can be difficult, and students don't necessarily think about like they think about like getting there initially, and then it's all the other times they have to come back and forth. So a good question to ask is like, can I stay, through some of the breaks? And some students will use that to work on campus or whatever. But that's definitely one. Yeah, the knife kit. Didn't even think of that. That was a fair.
Any other costs that can sometimes sneak up on students?
It can be lab coats, specialized lab notebooks, even your safety glasses, that kind of thing. If you're doing any kind of fine arts, the materials cost can be very considerable, especially if you're painting. Canvases are really expensive. And some schools, like a lot of things, are more upfront about what those might be than others. But it's something to try to suss out. As Jonathan said, you just got to ask questions, and see what you can find out as best you can, because they do owe you the information.
Yeah, I was going to share also like random fees, right? So Madeline, you mentioned like going from being on campus to off campus, but even as an off-campus student, there's like a uh a commuter student fee that you're like, what? Or there's all these random fees that the college might charge you or an institution might charge you. Another thing I think students tend to not think about is there's a lot of by major things. So if you are in a certain major that you need a new software every semester or every other semester, that they can sometimes be $20 and they can sometimes be $200. I, for example, was an education major and I wanted to become a teacher. And so every year I had a new expense where I had to get a physical and get certain shots, and I had to do background testing every semester. For our healthcare studies here, students here at CCP, their background testing is an expense for for them. And then lastly, I think there's sometimes really cool opportunities that students come across, like joining an honor society, or being part of professional organizations, and those memberships have fees. And I think sometimes it seems really exciting when a student gets an email and they're asked to be a part of this thing. And you're like, oh, I would of course want to be a part of this really cool thing. And then they're like, aha, $175, right? And you as a student may not have been planning for that, or at that time. They usually have deadlines as well, right? And so if you're not planning for it, you may not even have the opportunity to come up with the money also.
Thank you so much. I think there's just so many of these things that we don't necessarily plan for or think about. We had these great questions in the chat. So the first one is, how is work study award determined?
So every school can kind of figure out how they use the money differently. So um, basically your college gives you that ceiling that you can work up towards, but some schools might pay minimum wage, some schools pay well above minimum wage, so the number of hours it takes you to earn that maximum can vary. And some schools have really hard ceilings where once you've reached your hours you're kind of done, and others are like, that's fine, it's a campus job, if you work more than those hours then you'll just get paid more. So it really varies from school to school. One thing I would caution new students is it is tempting to feel like you have to earn every one of those dollars, but you need to make sure that, especially your first semester, you're not working yourself into bad grades. Your primary responsibility is to your classes. And unfortunately, this is heartbreaking. I've seen students, whether it's a work study job or a prior job, maybe you've become a supervisor at McDonald's and you're making good money, right? But I've seen sometimes where students don't have enough time to get their work for school done, and it means that they end up losing the scholarships that are actually worth a whole lot more than that hourly wage, or they're having to pay for a class that they already took, or they're withdrawing from a class and like they've spent their financial aid on it. So I'll pass to Alexis because it seems like she sees this probably too.
Another thing with work study is it's awarded based on how much other aid you are getting, and that the colleges have to consider that. So if you choose to take out loans, which we don't want people to have a ton of loans, but sometimes we have to do it, right? So we don't judge. But if you do choose to take out loans, there is a certain amount of money that an institution in the federal government can give you. And so if you take out a certain amount of loans, they might have to lessen the amount of work study that you were initially awarded, because there's but so much money that a school can give you. Another thing is the schools also have to consider how many credits you're taking. So usually a full-time student is going to be awarded a lot more money than a part-time student. And so if you are taking 9 credits and your friend is taking 15, you guys may not be awarded the same amount of work study. And if you're not awarded it, it's also okay to ask. There sometimes are wait lists. You may not have checked it off on your FAFSA. There can be any reason. And so you just check in with your work study coordinators at your schools, and they can see if you are eligible, that they will award you work study.
Thank you so much. Let's move on. This is a really important question. When should you receive an aid letter? My child still did not receive one from her main school choice, and I want to add on, and what do you do when that happens?
I can just start from the college perspective, and then you guys can speak from. So I work at a college right now, and so I do want to share that colleges are supposed to get your FAFSAs from the federal government. And that is how schools can determine aid. And so I don't want to automatically blame the school, and say that there is a chance that your child's FAFSA the school has not received it, and they're not in a position to award students yet. It is, unfortunately, in this current climate, it's been taking schools a little bit longer to get access to award letters. I can speak from our institution in particular. We can meet a student and they did their FAFSA a very long time ago, and if we don't have it here, we can't award students. But I would also say always, you should have them by now. So I'm sorry that you don't. But you should be reaching out to those schools' financial aid office fast. So Jonathan coming off mute. So I was just trying to advocate for the schools a little bit, but I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan.
No, that's exactly what I would have said. Like, call the school. Like, More than likely, there's maybe, a verification form or something, like literally sometimes it's just like you check a box that says no and you sign a form and like that's what's needed to finish processing things. So like it can be something very simple. It's not necessarily a bad sign. It just means that maybe somewhere an email got missed or from, either side something happened and you just need to contact them to get it sorted out. Yeah.
And just to note, I think we might actually, in the interest of time, just end up having to skip our breakout rooms because by the time we get into the rooms, we'll be out of them again. And some really great questions are coming up. So if you had a question that you were saving for the breakout rooms, maybe we can just address it in the whole group. I see another question coming in from Linda as well. And I do see thank you to our panelists for answering questions in the chat too. Anyone have anything to add about the question, when should you hear back about scholarships? Are we good on that one? What about who do you reach out
Or,
to?
well, I'll say for scholarships, every process is so different. That's a hard one to give a blanket answer. I know we have a very specific process for our scholarship. We're very clear about the application window, what is required. Allison does a tremendous amount of reminders and outreach and stuff, but if the students don't have it complete by the deadline, that's what it is. The cycle really goes from before senior year all the way throughout. Sometimes you're not going to hear that confirmation about a scholarship until the summer, and that can be an uncomfortable place to be, to feel like something is pending. And that's why it's good to have a lot of irons in the fire. I tell students that apply to anything that you're eligible for. Maybe you hear 10 no's, but the one yes is the thing that solves your problem. So having a lot of irons in the fire, a good tracking system, and then it's really about just um, knowing what the scholarship's all about and what their general cycle is. We're pretty transparent with our students. If they don't understand when and how the money gets done, they didn't read something, right? So just, good communication, organization, and then having a lot of options.
And since we're on the topic of scholarships, and I know we're getting some great answers in the chat as well, so shout out to everyone who's manning the chat, personing the chat. How early before applications should you be searching for scholarships and where are good places to search? Does anyone have anything else to add? Because we did get another good question coming in here too. Or actually, yeah, we got a couple other questions. So if you have something to add, great. And then we'll move on to the next one. What is too much for personal
I
loans?
can be quick. Yeah. Um, just on like when to start. Agree a year. I think sometimes like students are go-getters and they try to look like really early and there's like nothing actually for you to do just yet. It doesn't open really until you're kind of a senior, with the exception of like a few. So like specifically for you, if they're not a senior yet, I will drop this juniors, maybe. I don't know. Like this is an early one you can look at that will help you later on. Um, and then I'll also drop one that hasn't opened yet for seniors, because right now it might feel a little bit late to be applying for this, but this is a local one that hasn't opened yet that I would recommend. So I'm also dropping that one. That's all.
Great. Let's pivot now to the question. We had another great question here. Sorry, I lost it. We had I lost.
Allison, did you see the question about scholarship displacement? I know that's something that you worked on from sort of an advocacy perspective.
Yes. It's a little technical, but just quickly, it has to do with if you wind up with excess scholarships. I know, hard to imagine. Universities can reduce the amount that they are giving you by the sort of overage amount. I mean, I think probably Alexis can really speak to this as defined by their cost of attendance. And cost of attendance is a information they exchange with the federal government. And so I guess on the one hand, you should be so lucky to have that issue. That's what it is.
We've also got another great question here. What is too much for personal loans? Is 25,000 per year considered a lot to ask?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, that is way too much.
I was just starting to answer that too, and it was like I had like a long answer, and I was like the too long didn't read version is like probably, but ultimately it's a personal decision about like what you're prepared to take on for college, like what you're prepared to do to pay for college. Like, um, I think it's important to like to think about the things that you what are the things you want to think about when you're saying yes or no to that, and it's can I do this for 4 years? Is my student also going to want to go to grad school? Is there going to be more loans beyond this? So you got to think like long term too, not just this 1 year. And I think a lot of times students will be like, well, next year, like I'll become an RA and my expenses will be lower. I'll do this or that. And I think you gotta not think worst case scenario, but you really got to think about like what you're prepared to do across 4 years and then potentially, if they do want to go into grad school. And then really look at the terms, especially if you're talking about like a personal, like a private loan, got like variable interest rates and what it could potentially be increased up to, what repayment terms look like. So, federal loans are based off of, well, who the heck knows right now, but are based off of what income levels are. So they can only, your payments are based off of how much you're making, versus personal loans don't really care. So you just got to think through all these things when you're deciding to do that, because ultimately you don't want the student to come to junior year at their school and be like, I can't do this anymore, and suddenly have to transfer. So yeah, that's the big one that I think of is when I see families do this, and then it's the problem isn't necessarily the first year, it's the second year, it's the third year.
Yeah, I also think it's not even just like sometimes families can make it through the 4 years, but then it's like you get that first payment. And to your point, right, your federal loan, your first payment might be $0 based on how much the student is earning. And your first private loan payment is $850, and that's a monthly bill. And so I think that to the point of I think it's definitely a personal choice, but I also think it's like thinking about the long term goal of the student and you as a family. I can share a personal anecdote. I am the first in my family to go to college. I consider myself to be an uninformed borrower. It's the reason why I do the work that I do now. And I took out private loans to close my gap to go to Temple. And I don't regret my choice. I always say going to Temple is the best decision I made. But when I got into my big girl jobs and I decided I wanted to become a homeowner, that was me having those private loans was the thing that I had to face, right? And my debt to income ratio put me in a predicament that I had to rethink that goal of mine. And so I think that it is probably really hard to sit with your student and to have to talk through about making the decision of where they want to go to school, what their dream schools are, going away. Like those are really tough decisions. And I'm sure an 18-year-old is not thinking about purchasing property, right? In 10 years from that point. But I do think that those are the things of how it will impact them immediately for making payments and how high those payments will be for whether that's you as their parent and them as the student. But also like how does it impact their longer term goals? Like many millennials can't buy property, right? They can't become homeowners because of how much student loan debt that they have. And I'm sure they don't regret their degrees, right? We all were very happy we went to school, but I think like as a just added personal anecdote, that's something to consider.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our amazing panelists. Thank you for being here on an evening with us. I know we're a little over, and I would like to turn it over to Sarah, who is an education student at Temple University. And Sarah's about to graduate. So, what a huge accomplishment. So proud of you, Sarah. If you could, Sarah's going to share her screen in a moment and spin the wheel for computer raffle. So when we have a winner of the computer raffle, please stay on after you have won so we can arrange computer pickup. Okay, Sarah, you good?
Yep, gonna share right now.
So again, our winner will stay on after the end of the call and we'll arrange pickup that way.
All right, you guys can see my screen? All right, let's go then.
Kêu là mày quên phấn đúng không?
All right. Congratulations. Are you on?
Yeah.
Here you go. Congrats.
Thank you.
Oh, congratulations. If you could stay on, please, after the end of the call so we can arrange pickup. Congratulations.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much to everyone who attended today. In the chat, I did put information about all of our organizations. So if you ever want to connect with our organizations, with the resources that we are here for you. It takes a village, y'all. So that's why we are showing up for you, and you can find us also through the info I dropped in the chat. So congrats to our winner. Please stay on. Everybody else, thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Oh, Rachel, can I say something real quick?
Oh yeah, sorry, Emmanuel, go for
It's
it.
okay. I've seen a lot of people put in the chat, they're asking questions about scholarships, where they could find scholarships. If you didn't see the chat for whatever reason, I just want to invite you to visit Philly Goes to college.org. That's Philly Goes, the number 2, college.org. Our platform exists to provide you with scholarships on a weekly basis. We post about 2 to 3 scholarships 5 days a week. Our scholarships are high quality and resourced, and we filter them down through for students in Philadelphia and the region first, and then you'll find some national scholarships on there as well. So if you're looking for scholarships, like I said, we post them weekly. Just check out our website, phillygoestocollege.org. Thanks everyone for showing up. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks to our wonderful panelists, and we will be back in touch about our next It Takes a Village event.